Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy, and welcome back to a brand new movie review. I'm Chris, joined with Tate, and there has been a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes regarding this film that we're reviewing today. As you can see from the title, we are going to give our review on the almost unanimously derided film X-Men Dark Phoenix, or as it's called in some places, just simply Dark Phoenix, directed by Simon Kinberg and written by Simon Kinberg. Keep that name in mind for something I'm going to bring up later, who may or may not have written X-Men The Last Stand.
Oh boy.
Everyone's favorite X-Men film, I'm sure. And what's interesting about this one is that, I think we agree on this one? Maybe not.
I think this is going
to be a fun review.
No, we always kind of have this thing on the podcast where I'm always very lighthearted with my film opinions. I'm quite divisive as well. I will go out and immediately have strong opinions about any of the films that I've watched, and be pretty set in my opinions. Coming out of this film, in fact, no, let's go with going into this film. Going into this film, I was the only person in the podcast who actually was okay with Apocalypse. I didn't like it outright. I didn't hate it outright. I put it in that mid-50 range if I was rating it. Dead center. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. I thought that it could have had a lot to improve on. But at least it felt like an X-Men film. With this film going into it, the trailers made it look okay. The trailers made it look better than what Apocalypse was in my head. So I kind of went in with the same expectations that I did for Apocalypse. Not expecting a ridiculous kind of high-rated kind of X-Men film like Days of Future Past, Logan, First Class, or X2 even. I was thinking this is going to be like an X1, maybe breaching into the territory of X3, because, I mean, let's be honest here, we all don't get on with X-Men The Last Stand. There are still some good moments in that film that we can get behind. There are still some great character moments, and there is still some brilliant acting in there. I'm going to tell you now, I audibly laughed coming out of the cinema after seeing this film. We're usually on the podcast in the sense that Chris is always the person who's very negative about films, and everyone else is very and everyone else is very positive. Yeah. I'm going to tell you now, I hated this film. I absolutely hated it, and I feel like the reviews coming out for it and the fact that people aren't going to actually see it pretty much shows why it's possibly so hated.
This is currently on 23% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I know that Rotten Tomatoes isn't always like the be-all and end-all of everything. That does seem very low to me. Now, hearing your thoughts again on Apocalypse there and reiterating the fact that I absolutely hated Apocalypse, X-Men Apocalypse is my least favorite X-Men film, and I still stand by that.
I need to tell you, dude, you need to rewatch it, because once again, I did bring back these comments earlier. You should go and watch our X-Men Apocalypse review. Chris actually has very differing opinions to what he has now about it, and I do not believe that Chris has actually seen it since that review.
No, I haven't. X-Men Apocalypse... No, exactly. I saw it that one time. That's the only time I went to see it. It had no lasting impact on me. I think at the time, because I should start off right off the bat, X-Men is my favorite group sector of the Marvel universe in terms of the comics and the characters and everything. I love the X-Men. And I have seen every single X-Men movie so far, including the spin-offs like Deadpool and the Wolverine movies and everything like that. I'm a huge X-Men fan, and I've been with this franchise through the good, the very good, and the very, very bad. But hearing your thoughts there reiterated about X-Men Apocalypse, it sounds like our opinions are essentially switched. Like, you thought Apocalypse was middle of the road, okay, fine movie, not good, not great, and you hated Dark Phoenix. Mine are reversed. I thought Dark Phoenix was complete middle of the road, okay, and Apocalypse is one of the worst things I've ever seen in the X-Men franchise. Honestly, I was similar to you. The trailers came out, and whilst I didn't think it looked awful, I was going in with zero expectations. I knew it probably wasn't going to be good. Honestly, Apocalypse killed my love of X-Men. It just stopped it dead in its tracks. I thought First Class and Days of Future Past especially, is easily one of my favorite comic book movies ever. I'd rank it right up there with the likes of Batman Begins or, anything like that. I thought it was fantastic.
I want to throw in a special shout out to Logan as well, because that is it still is one of my favorite films just of all time.
And you know what? With the ending of Logan, that probably should have been the end of the X-Men franchise. To me, Days of Future Past is the ending the final, the finale, the goodbye to the X-Men, and Logan was that final goodbye to Wolverine specifically. And I think honestly it should have ended there. Simon Kinberg wrote X-Men: The Last Stand, which was their first stab at doing the Dark Phoenix saga, adapting that. And it didn't work, and he's gone on record saying he wasn't happy with that, and he wasn't happy with how it turned out, and obviously it had many negative reviews. It wasn't close to the comics or anything like that. So why get the same guy to adapt the same story? Like, I'm sorry, like, if you're going to hedge your bets when you're making this movie, when you're taking a second stab at this storyline, don't get the same guy who wrote it and fucked it up the first time.
It would be like America re-electing Trump after having like a good president in for another term and then just going, nah, actually we want Trump back. Like, that's what it would be like doing. This was just a poor decision in general. I mean, you have what people have been quoting to be the hated. I mean, we barely talk about X-Men Origins Wolverine, but that is and even after seeing this film, that is still the worst. I mean, watching will.i.am act, you can't get over that. So as far as ranking the films, this isn't the worst, but it doesn't mean that I didn't hate this film.
Yeah,
absolutely. And if you're going to bring on writers, bring on the people who like made the good X-Men films, not the ones who have already taken a stab at it and completely misfired. And we have talked about this in the past. X-Men films are either a hit or a miss. It's always the case. The only film where I can say is dead in the middle, at least in my opinion, would be,
I'd say the Wolverine.
I
honestly, apart from like the stuff at the start with the nuclear bomb, like I honestly can't remember much about that movie. Like, it was fine.
Yeah. So you're looking at a couple of hits, a couple of misses. And I mean, even if you said this film was okay, would you rather put it in the hit camp or the misfire camp?
Probably just in the miss. But this is the thing, like, I went into this with no I went into this expecting, I've seen all the reviews. Jeremy Jahns gave it his lowest score of dog shit and everything like that. I've seen people saying this is like the worst thing ever, the worst X-Men movie. So I was going into this with like, oh God, like, how bad are they going to fuck it up? And I was watching it, and like half hour in, I was like, it's not too bad, it's fine. And then an hour in, I was like, it's okay so far, what's going to happen? And then it finished, and I was just like, it was fine. Now, this is the final ever 20th Century Fox helmed X-Men movie. Does it go out on a bang? No. Like, I'm not going to argue that. It goes out on an absolute whimper. But I thought it was fine. It felt like, to me, it felt very small scale. A lot of the X-Men movies in the past, they've never been to the scale of like what you'd get in a
small scale. Chris, the opening bit is them going into space.
No, but I mean, it's the action in the X-Men movies has never been to the likes of Avengers or any of the MCU movies where it's completely, or like Man of Steel or something, where it's completely just hitting you over the head with this non-stop action all the way through. Everything that's happened in X-Men's always felt small scale, all the way through, pretty much, including this movie. To the point where I was watching this film and it felt so small scale, it almost felt like I was watching the X-Men in a TV show. It felt very much like a TV show, the way it was filmed, how it wasn't. It felt like watching 2 episodes of an X-Men TV show mashed into one, in terms of the acting, in terms of the script. I will say the script felt very weak to me. There was very little character development in there. The most character development you get in the movie is from Sophie Turner, who plays Jean Grey. And judging with the material that she had to work with, I actually thought she turned in a very good performance, a darn sight better than what I'd
go ahead and say that there's only 2 actors here I can credit with. I will say the word good performances. Sophie Turner, I mean, we've been saying this year from Game of Thrones, she was one of the best actors on this season. She maybe hasn't been the best actor in previous seasons. But even with this crap material, and it is crap material for the writing, she actually did a stellar job, and I think that I'm okay with her being Jean Grey. But the only other performance I'd actually credit would be to Nicholas Hoult, who I
Yes,
thought
yeah.
played Beast brilliantly in this film. The only other actual character who I think was well written in this film was Beast. He had a lot to say and had some very interesting opinions to give within this film. Really, he was the only person who, those two are the only characters who actually drove the plot on by any extent at all, which is it's a weird one because those two from previous films have always been kind of off to the side characters, not like the lead. They've been kind of in that frame, but never at the center of the picture.
The impression that I get from this movie, and Apocalypse, I think, was the movie where all of the main core actors, McAvoy, Fassbender, Jennifer Lawrence, and Nicholas Hoult, all of their contracts ended with Apocalypse. And this movie was delayed a bunch of times to get all the actors back for reshoots. The entire third act of this movie was reshot due to bad test screening, so I don't exactly know how the ending
Jesus
would have
Christ,
played out.
What was in the fucking
Like, I don't know if the ending in the original went completely cosmic and went into space and all this crazy stuff, but it didn't go over well, so they literally reshot the entire third act.
And this went over better? Jesus Christ.
Well, honestly, like I was looking for it and I couldn't tell where the reshoots began and ended. Like, it all flowed, like the movie flowed fine for me. I thought you have problems with the pacing. I thought the pacing was fine. The movie doesn't even clock in at 2 hours. It's 114 minutes, so it doesn't even make 2 hours. And honestly, it moved at a fine pace for me. This is the most paint by the numbers comic book movie I have seen in a long time. It's very safe. The characterization is just fine. It's very static. It doesn't really move anywhere. You don't get much development in there. The action's palatable. It's okay. It doesn't really wow particularly. There are a few cool mutant moments here where they do the powers. What Magneto will do something cool, or Nightcrawler, for example, but nothing wows, nothing astounds, and nothing's really particularly thought-provoking. It's like a background movie. Honestly, if I'm doing something, if I just put a movie on and this movie happens to be on the TV at some point, I'll just have it on at the background.
Burn your house down.
Like, honestly, it was so middle of the road for me. It was like, I'm not angry about it. I'm a huge X-Men fan. Like, I'm not angry about it. I'm just so apathetic towards it. It was like a movie I watched. It was fine.
This was 1 hour 53 minutes long. I do want to say the overall film is mind-numbingly boring. Barely anything happens throughout the entire film. And actually, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but this is one of those films where I must say it went too quick. It went far too quick.
I will agree. You mentioned about adding 20 minutes in for characterization. I could see that.
For characterization. Like, seriously, I mean, we are rarely blessed with a film that is under 2 hours long nowadays. I can't believe I'm complaining about this, but this film was far too quick. It felt like a 1 hour TV show.
That's what I mean, yeah.
It shows with the characters. None of the characters had any development, had barely any dialogue. And when they had dialogue, you don't have any long kind of conversations. I think one of the longest conversations is the end scene of the film, which we're going to go and talk on about later. And Chris immediately knows what I'm talking about. That's probably one of the longest bits of dialogue in the film.
I'd say that, the kitchen table, and
that's not good.
Can you think of any more?
But dude, here's the thing: the kitchen table part, which we see in the trailer. So this isn't really a spoiler. We see it in the trailer. I won't explain the scene itself, but that scene in itself is maybe like 5 lines, 6 lines long. It isn't a long scene. It's about 30, 40 seconds long. And that is the longest bit of dialogue we have in the entire film. How maddening is that?
Yeah.
Like, how shitty is it that they're able to not have maybe not enough dialogue into the script or anything like that, but they ran out of ideas on how to develop these characters, even though there's a back catalogue of over 50 years worth of these comic books? I mean, what were they thinking when they were writing these characters for this film?
We talk about back catalogue of comics. Let's look at the back catalogue of films. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, I could get up in arms about the lack of continuity between the previous films, the fact that Jean Grey turns into the Phoenix at the end of X-Men Apocalypse, and then she only gets the powers to become the Phoenix at the beginning of this movie. So technically, she shouldn't even have the powers yet. It seems absolutely pointless talking about bad continuity, because all of the X-Men films before this have had bad continuity. That's
I'd say there's only, I mean, X-Men First Class had decent, I mean, they didn't really have much continuity to go off, and Days of Future Past somehow tied in continuity quite nicely. But
well, even then, you have stuff like Wolverine, them approaching Wolverine at the bar and him not knowing who they are. But then again, you could argue that many years have passed. There were some continuity things there that don't make sense in terms of the ages. But oh boy, this movie is set in 1992. Let that just sink in for a second. So the original X-Men movie is set in 1999 when it was made. I think it was 1999 or 2000, I forget.
yeah,
Either way.
has the original timeline been wiped out yet? I have no fucking idea.
So here's the thing. They reset the timeline with the end of Days of Future Past, but then they kind of phrase it where history will kind of course correct and the same kind of things will happen. You know, in X-Men Apocalypse, you see Weapon X, you see Wolverine breaking out of Stryker's base, like he has the powers again, so you get the impression that things are going to keep permeating and happening in exactly the same way. And these were billed as prequels. Like when First Class came out, I thought it was going to be a straight up reboot. No, it was framed as a prequel. These characters are meant to be exactly the same characters that we got, you know, like Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen, everything like that. And you mean to tell me that in the span of 7 years after this movie, you know, James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender have got to become Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen? Like, just no. Like, that's not how it works. No.
Like, if we move away from just the continuity and the canon at the moment that is this franchise, because it's completely blown out the water, like it's completely dead. Just, I want to very quickly just talk about some of the side characters used in this film. I mean, this film, and what's always been good about the X-Men is you have those zany kind of characters to the outside that you can always go to. I mean, even in the last film, for the villains side of things, you had the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse. You could probably name all 4 of them straight off the bat. Like, go on, Chris.
We had Angel.
Yeah.
I don't think average moviegoer will be able to name them. You had Angel, you had Psylocke. Storm was one of them for some reason, and then who the fuck was the other guy?
We can name 3 of them.
Can name 3 of them, and then
I can't even picture. Magneto would be the 4th.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
So
you know, the main one.
At least you have those characters. You then have the people in the house. Just random characters like Quicksilver. You have all the standard side characters. You have Jennifer Lawrence, and all that jazz. But with this film, they limit it down to, what was it, like 5 from 5, 3, 4, 5 from each kind of team that forms?
They keep it small scale. You have your big, like Quicksilver's in there, although Anais in the comment says that he wasn't utilized very much. I agree. He was kept to a very, very minimum in this film. You've got Nightcrawler and you've got Cyclops and you've got Jean Grey. So it's 4 or 5 main characters.
Without actually knowing the search result, would you have been able to name the villain from this film?
No. So I did have to. I don't even think she's named. Maybe once in the film, I didn't catch it. I had to go on Wikipedia. Jessica Chastain. Claudia in the comments says, doesn't Chastain speak? No, she does speak. I read up on the history of the comics and the characters, as I tend to do when I don't know who someone is. So is this going to be a spoiler? I don't know.
Look, all I'm going to say is when you look at Marvel films and stuff like that, you have a small-time villain like Baron Zemo. You immediately know who the hell he is. He wasn't a villain who said many words. In fact, he wasn't a villain who actually took many actions. He's very similar to the kind of character that Jessica Chastain's character is in this film. But you remember that villain's name. You remember what he did and everything throughout the film. This villain, I mean, we'll go into it in spoilers, but it is the most confusing kind of character I've ever seen put to a comic book film. I don't understand her, don't understand her motivations, don't understand her powers. Absolutely nothing makes sense about this character. Even like the opening scene of the character makes no sense at all.
She was massively forgettable, and getting star power in such as Chastain, that's an absolute travesty because she is one of the finest actresses working in the business today. I believe like when the leaks came out and I think the script or the story got leaked and people were reading it and say it was going to be terrible, it was going to be the worst thing ever. I believe that I saw the mention of Skrulls mentioned. The Skrulls featured in Captain Marvel, of course. They're the shape-shifting alien creatures. Which is a power that she does have in this movie, although they never specifically say or use the name Skrulls. And if you go on Wikipedia, they say that they're the Dabari. Now, I checked Dabari, And apparently in the Dark Phoenix saga in the comic books, they're just mentioned that their planet has been destroyed by the Dark Phoenix. That is it. There is no more about them. They're apparently plant-like creatures as well in the comic books. So they've completely... It seems like they went to go with Skrulls. Marvel said no because we're using it in Captain Marvel, and then they just had to run with what they had and just make up something on the fly.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like. She is very forgettable, but I prefer her because the movie is inherently forgettable. So she's just kind of a villain of the week. She's just kind of there. She does have some kind of backstory where, I guess this is drifting into spoilers now. Their planet was destroyed. Oh, stop me if you've heard this villain motivation, by the way, before. Their planet was destroyed, their homeworld. So they're looking to harness a power to essentially terraform Earth and turn it into a habitable world for themselves. It seems like that's almost every villain's motivation now. The thing is with Apocalypse is that Apocalypse is a huge villain in the X-Men franchise and the Marvel franchise in general, and I feel like he just didn't work in those movies. I thought that the actor, very good actor, Oscar Isaac, completely miscast in that role. He wasn't imposing. He didn't feel threatening at all. This villain did feel somewhat threatening. She was very stoic. She didn't have much emotion. I'm not saying that I was terrified of this villain.
Whoa. Having no emotion and also having no actions makes her terrifying. Yes, Chris, I completely agree.
She feels imposing in some scenes, though. Like she could, she evaporates people. She could just murder anyone she wants to. She did feel more threatening than Apocalypse just sort of phasing people into the side of a sandy building.
Like, I just didn't get this villain at all. I will talk very quickly about the one thing that I was completely okay with from this film, which was the soundtrack. I know that Chris wouldn't have understood this same experience, but in the cinema, the sound mixing and the actual soundtrack was very, very noticeable and did bring a little bit of a little bit to the film. So whenever like a rocket booster would go off, the seats would be shaking and stuff like that, which was quite cool from the actual sound. It was a very loud film to listen to in the cinema. And the actual soundtrack was extremely pronounced. Hans Zimmer doing the score for this film. It was very, very pronounced, especially in high pressure moments within the film. So I actually quite liked both the score and sound mixing for this film.
I really miss the John Ottman score. Like, this being the final 20th Century Fox helmed X-Men movie, I really wanted to hear that. Dun, 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 like the X-Men theme, the X2 theme.
Here's the question. Did Hans Zimmer miss out on another film because he worked on this film? Because that would be a misstep.
I don't know, to be honest, but I remember that when he worked on Batman v Superman, he said that he never wanted to work on a superhero film again. He never wanted to work in that genre again.
He doesn't pick superhero films apart from obviously The Dark Knight.
He's done Batman, Amazing Spider-Man 2, Batman v Superman, Man of Steel. He has done a lot, and he said that he wasn't going to do any more ever again unless the right story came about, and then they approached him, and for some reason he said yes to X-Men. This soundtrack did absolutely nothing for me. I did like the Dark Phoenix theme, the theme attached to Jean Grey's character. It was a nice little melody. It was a nice little leitmotif that continued all the way throughout the movie, and people know how much I love my themes, so I really appreciated that. But other than that, it just felt like the B-sides off the Interstellar soundtrack, off the Dunkirk soundtrack. It was everything you come to imagine. Every trope you can imagine from a Hans Zimmer soundtrack is the soundtrack of this movie. So nothing really. It didn't have that. I didn't
know it was Hans Zimmer beforehand, and about midway through the film was this. I just said to my kind of self, this soundtrack reminds me of Interstellar.
Yeah,
just little kind of organ notes and stuff like that. Just kind of, I was like, oh, Interstellar, okay.
Totally. There are a lot of moments in this movie that I did appreciate, though, as an X-Men fan. I haven't read the Dark Phoenix comics, so I don't know how close this is. I know that they went cosmic in this, and they do have an entity, although she does, I believe in the comics, it's an actual Phoenix entity that possesses her. Towards the beginning of the movie, when they go into space, there's some great team work with the X-Men, like the X-Men getting a call to go and sort something out in space. That did feel very X-Men to me. That did feel like, quite campy. That's what the X-Men are, going to save the world, save humanity from something in space. Each member of the team is using their powers in a certain way, a certain creative way, which I thought was really cool. And that's what I want to see from an X-Men movie. What I don't appreciate and what I've never appreciated from this movie is them ramming Jennifer Lawrence down our throats as Mystique. Mystique should not be the leader of the X-Men, and she's basically directing everyone. The director of the X-Men is in the comics, and to me, it's Cyclops. So I'd have liked to have seen Cyclops do a lot more. In all of the X-Men movies, they've completely wasted his character.
They kind of missed that completely. In the original 3, he was of age, and it made sense. You'd always have that dynamic between Logan and Cyclops kind of having that kind of rivalry and almost being two leaders in the same team. With this set of films, it's almost like they went too they left it a little bit too late to introduce the character, and then they had to introduce him young to be part of the school.
Yeah.
For me, I think those interactions were okay, but it made absolutely no sense of those interactions being that case after the previous film. I will go into it a little bit more in spoilers because I do not want to spoil anything, even about the start of the film.
Should we go into spoilers now? Because I really want to start talking about Charles's character.
I want to talk about. I want to rip this film to pieces, and I can only do that by spoiling it for people.
So if we go overall thoughts, spoiler free, I thought it was fine. It's not a good movie. It's completely middle of the road. I'd give this like a 5 or a 6 out of 10, maybe probably a 5.
I'd give this. I'd give this a 2 out of 10.
It's to me, it's not the worst X-Men movie. It's completely inoffensive. It does kind of make the 20th Century Fox films just go out on a real whimper. And of course, now that Disney have acquired it, we're going to get some kind of reboot in 5 probably or so years' time. It's a shame because they are working with a lot of great talent, and we've seen this cast do much better X-Men movies with much better material, with competent directors, you know, with likes of X-Men First Class and Days of Future Past, and with Logan fairly recently. And it's just a shame that it's kind of come to this. But to me, it was just sort of, I'm not going to go out of my way to watch this movie again, but it was fine. And I did enjoy it more than Apocalypse. A lot of people are really loving this review, saying like, this is like, you know,
yeah,
because they like to see us have differing opinions on films. The thing is, like, can I see people, if someone said that this is the worst comic book movie ever made, I'd actively disagree with them. Yeah. I'd be like, it's not that bad. But you know, I can understand all the problems you have with it. I guess they just didn't affect me as much. But let's get into spoilers now. So that is your warning.
Very quickly on top of that, this is not the worst X-Men film, but let's be 100% clear here. That's not exactly
a compliment.
A difficult task to be.
That's true. That is very, very true.
And this is if we're setting a bar here, this is only just clearing it. It's clearing it enough for someone to maybe go, yay, well done, here, have a sticker, but not really enough for anyone to take notice. Some people think that they haven't actually cleared the bar. That's how close it is to clearing the bar. That's what we're talking about here. And just, we are now into spoilers, obviously. But moving back to that point which I made earlier about the team dynamics, we have one scene before this, which we'll possibly move back to in a minute. But we do have the team dynamics here from this film. I don't understand why they immediately went in with the space mission and straight into the Phoenix taking over her. I think this film could have possibly done better with maybe showing 2 missions. One which goes incredibly well and the team dynamics going extremely well. Charles receiving his medal. Everything going extremely like, oh, so we set the standard for what happens. Because this film doesn't actually have a standard to be set to from where it starts off. It immediately goes into Phoenix mission. It immediately goes wrong. So maybe this is the first time they've ever worked together well as a team. Mm-hmm. Maybe this is the first time something's gone wrong. We have no idea. We then immediately cut to Charles getting a medal and all of them being welcomed back as heroes with, like, they've just touched down on the ground. Kids are already at the airport wearing fucking space shuttle outfits and shit like that. Maybe only 3 or 4 hours after the event's taken place. But we actually don't have a set idea of how this team works together. All we have is this one failed mission. We don't even have it from previous films. We have nothing from Apocalypse because the team was still forming from that film. we end up having this situation where we have the mission go wrong. We have Charles kind of going off and getting his medals and shit like that. And then people complain about it later on in the film. We've only ever seen him do it once.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as an audience, you'd want to see one mission, which is the set standard, before you show something going batshit crazy. Like, in every single film where you look at something going wrong, there's always an example of something going right first. Because otherwise you immediately assume that this happens every single week. Oh, yeah. It's Dean this time. Oh, for fuck's sake, it's fine. We'll get another one. We've got like 20 kids on the block ready to go. Like, this film was way too short. And there were loads of occasions throughout this entire film where these kind of moments of undeveloped character and undeveloped plot and undeveloped team trying to basically mimic themselves as, oh, but you already know how they're interacting with each other. You've seen so many X-Men films before. It's just something that is needed. You need to have that kind of moment where you have a mission which goes right just before you see the mission that goes wrong. It's just simple filmmaking. In a, what was it, 200 million budget film or whatever it was?
Well, that could have been including the reshoots, or I don't know if the reshoots were even more costly than what the initial budget was of this movie. To me, I didn't have this goes back to the pacing. Like, I agree with you there. Like, you could show a mission at the start. To me, just get them in space. This is where the pacing really moved at a good pace for me. Like, I thought it moved great. Like, I thought they just, under 2 hours, get the story done. It's a very simple story. Don't outstay its welcome. So I didn't really bother with that. What I did think was funny is that they mentioned that there's a guy trapped. Like, they get all the people out of the shuttle and then they get back to their own craft. And then they go, oh no, actually, wait, there's another guy that's like in the airlock or something who's still stranded over there. And they say, like, we've got 30 seconds to get out of here. And they go, we don't have time to go over there. Like, how are we going to get over there? Like, Jean Grey, like, you're going to have to, like, go over there and, move the supernova away from here. I'm like, are they forgetting that they've got a character who can teleport immediately and Quicksilver, who is the fastest thing in the universe? We've seen what he's done in Days of Future Past. We've seen what he's done in Apocalypse, where he rescued everyone
seen what he's done just then.
Yeah,
we saw what he just did.
Let's not forget that moment in X-Men Apocalypse where he saves everyone in the X-Mansion as it's exploding. Yeah, that's like an explosion lasts like, what, a fraction of a second. This guy's got 30. Imagine what Quicksilver could fucking do in 30 seconds. All he's got to do is teleport back over there. That's instantaneous. Run, get the guy out of the airlock, teleport back. So I did kind of laugh at that bit. I thought that was hilarious.
Like, it's just like, Gene, do you want to go, like, patch up the ship? We might be able to save it as well as this one passenger.
Yeah.
It's just like...
But before we get to that scene, and this is the big thing that I want to talk about, and why I'm not quite as angry as a lot of people are at how they handled Xavier, because I've seen that as one of the biggest criticisms of this movie. But I do have a problem with it. So we open with a young Jean Grey in the car with her parents, and they're arguing over what should be on the radio. And she's we get the impression that the Phoenix is already a part of her, similar to X-Men 3, where you have Famke Jensen, and it's almost like a split personality thing. She suppressed this part of her, this other persona, part of her powers, this very dangerous and powerful side to her. She suppressed it with the help of Xavier, and then when it's released, that's the Phoenix. And I thought they were going to do something similar with this movie at the beginning, where we see this kind of Damien Omen split side to her, where she is very powerful. But it never really kind of amounts to anything, because later in the movie, it's not until she gets hit with the cosmic ray where she becomes the Phoenix. So up until this point, this is just regular Jean Grey. So the fact that essentially in the movie, Charles Xavier, we learn later that what did he do? He like wiped her memory or something, didn't he? Or suppressed the traumatic memories.
What he did was he placed in good memories in place. So he kind of manipulated the situation. So that he seemed like the good person, and that she would kind of forget what happened and all of that. Like,
which now, when you put it like that, it sounds like, he's not trying to suppress this very powerful force that's inside of her, which could be the Phoenix.
He's just trying to save a little girl.
He's just trying to save a girl from a traumatic memory, which you have
that would work if they maybe didn't show all of the car crash immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Like, saving a girl from, like, your parents are dead, but, like, you're the only person who survived. Don't worry, like, it's not your fault kind of thing. for it to turn out to be her fault later, that's perfectly fine. But we immediately see that it's her fault. We all, as the audience, immediately know that it's her fault. Like, so you're immediately kind of in that situation of assuming that Charles also knows that it's her fault. And that's not how the character's meant to be run or worked. That just makes it stupid.
Mhm.
I like to believe that they're trying not to be stupid, and they are going with the whole Charles was just trying to save like
Yeah.
this little girl from the trauma of like her family. And having that kind of revelation of, oh, the father's actually alive, oh, he blames the daughter, he knows what happens, kind of thing, unveiling later.
Charles knew about that and took her anyway.
It would have made more sense if they hadn't shown the entire car crash, maybe showed Jean playing the radio, and then maybe just leave it there. Don't even show the car flipping or anything like that. Just have it there and then cut immediately to kind of her back at the place and Charles approaching her and saying, I'm really sorry about the car crash and stuff like that. Like, you then don't know what happens, and then having it slowly unfold throughout the film what exactly happens, and that be the cause of her kind of flipping rage. The fact that she almost had it in her all along, and then it slowly build out and out and out and out and out. And this near-death experience causes her to finally kind of unleash herself.
Are we meant to infer then that she did always have this split personality to her, but then the cosmic ray brought that out? Or are we meant to infer that, well, no, because we're told that the power comes from that
the cosmic ray. It makes no fucking sense.
It felt like they had two ideas and they should have stuck to one or got rid of one completely.
Dude, they had more than two ideas for this film. They had at least 4. And they tried to make all of them happen, and it just didn't work.
My point is, everyone is hating on Charles Xavier in this movie. Like, everyone is shouting, everyone has a problem with Charles Xavier and how he's handled it. But I watched Red Letter Media's review on this movie, and they make a great point in that, why doesn't Charles just say to everyone, she got hit with an alien force, that's why she's killing everyone. That's why she's so mad. I can't control
what I absolutely hated about Charles Xavier's character and James McAvoy's performance in this was that there was no bite, there was no fight back. We see it in every other film. Sure, he's always on the side of don't take the violence option and stuff like that. In this situation, one of his star pupils suddenly going fucking haywire and like killing people, he should have gone ballistic. He has people shouting at him. He has people kind of questioning his judgment and questioning his ownership of the team, questioning even what his motivations are for having the team in the first place. He should have gone absolutely ballistic, and it would have worked perfectly for the film, showing that not only is she out of control, but he's out of control completely and out of touch. That isn't shown even slightly in this film. He's very tame. He doesn't even have like a moment where he raises his voice of any sort. Like, he always seems in kind of like the, oh yeah, Nightcrawler, can you take me there? Or like, oh, this is a kind of
I will say that
and stuff like that. It's a muted performance. It's awful.
A lot of the actors in this, like the main, you can tell they're just phoning it in completely. Chief among them, Michael Fassbender, who is a fantastic actor. He's just sleepwalking throughout this role. He's like, yeah, okay, one more time as Magneto, let's do it. The character that I've always had problems with, though, is Jennifer Lawrence. I'm not a massive Jennifer Lawrence fan, and I really don't like that they've kind of pushed her as arguably the leader of the entire team. You could tell so much that she wanted out of this movie. The bit that made me laugh the most, and we know that, you know, she's gone record and hates the makeup. It's like, guess what? That's the job. You're getting paid however much money, just like wear the fucking makeup. They go on the mission. She's all blue, of course. She gets to the X mansion, the place where she'd be at home to be blue. And like immediately she changes into Jennifer Lawrence because she doesn't want to wear the makeup. There was a line in this movie that made me want to walk out of the movie, and that's where she says, like, X-Men, like the women always help the men. It should be called X-Women. I wanted to fucking walk out. So much like that
might be one of the forced lines I've ever heard, because genuinely that entire mission, even if you're just taking the statement and just kind of putting it as common facts, Quicksilver puts it very, very, very well. Like, he did all of the mission. Jean kind of came in at the end. Like, it's one of those where it's one of the most forced lines. Look, you want an empowering female moment. You want an empowering female character to kind of voice their opinions. Don't do it like that. That is the worst way you can possibly do it. And just kind of, it ends up being one of those lines. And I know that you'll probably refer to this, but I'll refer to it first. when in X-Men Apocalypse they go to see Return of the Jedi and they say, "Oh, the third one's always the worst."
Yeah. Oh god,
That
I
is
forgot
that
that.
is this moment from this film.
Yeah.
Um,
I was that line got me so angry to the point where, so I know you've got like your own rewrite of this scene in particular, but we need to
yeah.
talk about it. The death of Mystique. So what confused me about that at first, and I know that you could argue that the timeline has been reset since Days of Future Past, so this could happen. I thought the events of the previous X-Men movies would still eventually happen because the time kind of corrects
Well,
itself.
if that's the case, then Jean Grey would go Phoenix twice.
That's true. And also, Mystique is still alive in 1999. So I was confused by that. I was like, how could she be dead? But you know what? I'm not even going to try and entertain the idea of
Pointless.
understanding this timeline. It's stupid.
Did we even talk about the fact that Mystique might be Nightcrawler's mum, or like,
That was vaguely hinted at in X-Men 2 and has never been brought up again because his dad, of course, is Azazel, who was in First Class,
it
who
would
was
make
killed.
sense, and it would make sense because he's blue and they kind of teamed up together in first at the end of First Class and in Days of Future Past, that it would kind of make sense that that would be the relationship there. Like,
Brinsley's asked how far into the movie does Mystique die? I think it's probably about 45 minutes.
I'd say
somewhere like that.
less than that. Less than that. I'd say about half an hour in.
And honestly, this was the biggest problem that I had because maybe this is just me. I love the character of Mystique, but I don't like Jennifer Lawrence's Mystique. I definitely prefer, oh God, what was her name? Rebecca Romijn's Mystique in the Bryan Singer trilogy. So the big event that's kind of the event that shakes up all of the X-Men is the death of Mystique, a character that I haven't really liked, who's kind of been a terrorist and a bit of a breakaway from the X-Men for a long time. And I just think that you needed some kind of bigger event to completely show off the Dark Phoenix's power. In X-Men 3, you of course had Jean Grey killing Professor X, and Cyclops. Cyclops was a fan favorite, maybe didn't do all too much in the films, but killing Professor X was a huge shocking moment. You're taking out the leader of the X-Men, essentially, the person who created
you've already I already voiced my rewrites to Chris, but I may as well voice it to everyone else just so everyone kind of knows what's happening. A very, very simple scene swap, really. You have Jean go to her father. You have her talk about her past, kind of slowly be taken over by the Phoenix Force. I think this is the only time in the film where the Phoenix Force actually talked to her in her head, which is a bit of an odd one. But she kind of questions her childhood, questions why he never reached out to her and stuff like that. She then goes a little bit ballistic, kind of destroys the house, but doesn't kill him, is going to kill him, but decides against it because she still hasn't completely turned yet. This isn't kind of her completely losing it. She still has some amount of control. She then goes to Magneto to kind of find answers and try and gain control. Magneto has no fucking idea what's happening, and the X-Men then show up. The X-Men then confront her whilst she's at Magneto's kind of paradise. When she's there, she kind of starts to lose it because she feels like the X-Men are trying to hunt her down, knows that she's a threat, and that would be the moment where she would kill Mystique. Makes more sense to have Mystique die in front of Magneto, shows more motivation for Magneto to actually kill Jean. Also shows Beast kind of understanding Magneto's kind of point of view of sometimes you do have to actually kill to get the job done. It immediately splits the cast. You can have her kill a couple of other minor characters at that point as well. Maybe some people from Magneto's Paradise. But basically, from that moment, that would be the big moment where people go, oh shit, this isn't just a problem where we can just tuck it away. You then have that immediate divide from that point. She disappears off. Charles says, we got to do something about this now. We got to take her back in. Magneto says, no, fuck you. I'm going to go kill her. Who's with me? And that's where the people split. Mm-hmm. That's where you see the divide. You then have the various different characters hunting her down. That immediately makes all of the characters in the film better. Like, it gives them actual motivations where this film forced them so heavy-handedly. And it also gives development to the characters, gives them a little bit more room to act, a little bit more time. You actually have some dialogue between Charles and Magneto within the film, apart from the end, really. Like, it's something that it could have easily been done actually gives kind of a ramp up of Jean's powers instead of going Dark Phoenix and killing like Mystique and then immediately going to Magneto's place and not really killing anyone. That's kind of going, maybe she's not as bad. This actually builds it up, shows that she's a real threat, shows that not only is she a threat, but actually kind of there is motivation for killing her. There's motivation for saving her. Charles thinks it's an accident that Mystique died, is very sad about it, but thinks that she's still worth saving. Magneto goes, no, some things aren't worth saving. Like, we've got to kind of end this as it is. And that's what the X-Men films have always been built off. It's the two different ways of dealing with the situation. Do you want to be like Charles and you want to protect everyone, get them integrated in society and mend people? Or do you want to be like Magneto? If something is broken, grind it to dust. Like, make it useless. So that is the X-Men franchise. That immediately makes it a better film overall.
You do kind of still have that dynamic there, though, where Magneto wants to go and kill her and Charles wants to save her.
But it doesn't feel as gripping.
It doesn't feel as strong because Magneto wasn't there to witness it, essentially, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'll agree with that. Yeah, like if you did get everyone there, maybe that would have been better. I don't know. I don't know if Mystique as a character dying is that person where everyone's going to be upset at the school that Mystique's died. You know what I mean? Like maybe that's just me. But maybe there are some Mystique fans out there. But we need to talk about the ending, talking about Charles and Magneto, because I think is it specifically the final scene that you have a problem with?
I just laughed because it was the same end scene from Dark Knight Rises.
This was better than the ending of Dark Knight Rises because I have many
problems. It really wasn't.
It really was. It so was, and I will argue till my dying day that this is the case. This was at least in keeping with the characters. This was, you know, Charles and Xavier. You've always had that thing, like these two people playing chess. They're essentially, you know, they want the same thing, but the way that they're going about it is completely different. These two characters were always fascinating to watch each other sitting down to a chess game. It did remind me of the end of X-Men 3 as well, where you have Ian McKellen about to play chess and the piece just moves. And then you get the final shot, which is the actual Phoenix in the sky. So you do get somewhat of the Phoenix.
I'm telling you now, that final shot in the sky is... It's like a fucking rainbow, like being at the end of any Hollywood film. That was fucking terrible. That was awful.
I can see that, and you know what? Like, this movie needed to be that big end to the X-Men franchise, but then again, I don't know if they knew that that was going to happen when they made this movie. I think the merger went through after this, so maybe they expected to keep making these movies.
I want to say as well, like from all of the previous films, there has been some form of like ramifications because of the events of the film. With this film, I feel like there's nothing. There's no one mourning. Like, I know Mystique's already been mourned a little bit, but there's no one mourning Jean really at the end, other than the we'll name the academy after the person who almost murdered everyone.
So and did murder someone. There are elements like that where it does seem like they would have set up for another one. You have Xavier leaving the school completely. You have the school being renamed. You have Beast becoming essentially the new professor of the X-Men, the new leader of the school.
But there are no consequences for the actions of the film. It's basically saying, look, doesn't matter what side you choose, there's always the right answer. It's such a happy Hollywood ending for a franchise and a film which is so fucking somber. This is one of the fucking... It's dark and it's not very fun. It's boring. And yet they have this double rainbow ending of them playing chess in the south of... Or no, not in the south of in Paris. With a fucking like phoenix-shaped rainbow in the sky, and the academy being named after the murderer who murdered one of their own pupils, and everyone gets their happy ending because like Beast is the professor. No, I want to see actual consequences like they do in all of the other films. Apocalypse had massive consequences, like at the end of it, and this film has none at all. None.
I wonder how much of this was a reshoot. Jennifer Lawrence, I think it's Jennifer Lawrence, gets a voiceover at the very end of the movie.
No, it isn't.
Who gets the voiceover at the end of the film?
Sophie Turner.
That's it. Sorry, yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, this was my story. I've transcended what it is to be a fucking human. It's just like, Jesus Christ.
I
Christ.
wondered if this was a
Go
reshoot,
with
though,
that angle.
maybe. Because there is a line that she says, and I think it's when you see shots of Beast taking over as the Professor. She says, like, new beginnings and the X-Men will continue. And I thought, oh, I wonder if they've added this line in because now Disney are going to take over and reboot it and take it into new ventures and new beginnings and things like that. Maybe I'm reading too much into that, but I did think it was.
It's the dead girl saying, "Oh, I've transcended what it is to be like a mutant, to be human. Like this is all a happy ending for everyone. Everyone will do a big dance number. Like it's just so shit."
I didn't think it was great. I thought it was fine. Like, as the final X-Men movie, did it hit, like Brinsley was saying, he wanted this to be end game level epic after a however many 19-year franchise. It was never going to be that.
It was never going to be that.
The
But
closest you're going to get to that is Days of Future Past,
Logan,
or as an epilogue, Logan. Imagine if Logan was the final 20th Century Fox X-Men
the
movie.
shot
The
of
final
the grave,
shot, yeah, the final
of the
shot
X.
of the movie, the X gravestone, boom,
Yeah,
beautiful.
but I mean, we didn't really go over it. But the final fight scene, I feel like it took up half the runtime, to be honest.
No,
And
it didn't go
genuinely
on that
did.
long.
It took up at least 25 minutes.
I don't think it was that long. I actually thought it was pretty short, relatively.
Like, no, you have like 3 stages to the fight. You have the start where they're kind of all discussing like whose fault it was and they're all strapped in. Then you have the, what was it, discount scrolls kind of jumping up on the roof of the train. You then have the army's attempt to killing them. Then you have kind of the mutants teaming up and like going, God, you know what? You're all not so bad, you are. Like any other X-Men film, the second you unbuckle them, they're all going to start fighting each other. Like, because they all have their own different opinions. You're going to have Magneto racing to go and kill Jean. You're going to have Charles trying to kind of stop him. And that would have been good. That would have been good. It would have been a little bit like Days of Future Past, but it would have been a good ending because you got 3 people, 2 lots trying to kill them. One person trying to harness, which obviously Magneto doesn't want. He just wants to kill outright dead. Charles wanting to save her, but possibly not have the Phoenix inside her, and then the weird discount scrolls trying to harness the power and kill everyone else on board. So you have 3 different motivations there, all racing for the same goal. That would have been fun. With this film, they go with what I can only describe as a Netflix hallway fight scene from any of the Marvel films set in a train. And there are some parts which are great. Magneto is a good fighter. Nightcrawler is a good fighter.
Yeah, there's some
Brilliant.
great bits, like the bit where Magneto wraps an entire train and crushes someone. That was awesome. The bit where Nightcrawler's teleported and stabbing someone like 100 times. That was great.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And then it all kind of comes down to the train becoming like a weird kind of roller coaster ride through the sky for a little bit. And then suddenly, like,
it was spectacle. It was spectacle, right? In a
it wasn't.
It was lit train corridor.
And the final point I want to kind of end on is the villain, because we've already said the villain doesn't make any sense. Like we don't understand it. The villain starts off with being 1 star in the sky that splits into 3. We see 3 things come out. What happens from those 3? We end up with like, what was it, 20 or 30 or 40 things being born?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it would have made more sense to have 3 strong villains and maybe some lackeys or something like that. I don't know. But that didn't make any sense to start off with. What is her power? Does she twist stomachs? Does she have people like genuinely? It looked like that swirl effect that you have on computers in like the 90s. Yeah. Like she just kind of swelled their stomachs. She's like, "Oh, you got an upset tummy, haha."
She had powers.
That is her villain quality.
What else did she do? Or whatever the story required her.
Because she was also able to like or not be read by Jean through her mind, which I guess is a power in itself. I'm not sure if she was able to read Jean's mind. But also she was able to basically fucking warp reality to whatever the fuck she wanted it to be by like changing what the room looked like and stuff like that to explain a story. It was just like every single scene she had like a new power, and yet she still only said like 3 sentences across the entire film.
Yeah.
It's maddening, absolutely maddening. And this film, I mean, I could go on for hours about how much I dislike it. It's not the worst of the year. It's not even the worst comic book film of the year. Hellboy's still up there as the worst comic book film and the worst film of the year. But dear God, this tried so hard.
Here's a question for you. Did you prefer this or Aladdin?
Aladdin, straight off the bat, immediately.
I didn't. I didn't.
Absolutely. I can enjoy Aladdin to an extent because there are some interesting performances in there. Some of the songs got on, and Will Smith actually put down an okay performance. I mean, some of it is painful to watch because it killed my childhood. This just kills my love of film.
Wow. Wow. Okay, so I wouldn't go that far. I know it's unfair to compare it to Aladdin, but a 2 hour 20 horrible remake of one of my favorite movies with terrible performances.
Here's
And
the thing, Chris. So one of the things that motivates me when I come up with ideas about stories and stuff like that, and it's why I'm always good on these reviews where I like to change different parts of the script and stuff like that. I get motivation and inspiration from horrific shit things and turn them into slightly better good things. Like watching this film kind of motivated me to write like a text message of about a page long, basically changing this film. And a film motivating me to be that kind of riled up and like motivated to actually do that, it shows how bad it really was on every single level. On every single level.
See, I sent this message on the group chat, and I guess I'll end with this: is that,
and I do just want to point out the same guy produced Fan Four Stick.
Oh, oh, that guy ain't going to be getting any work for a while.
In fact, this is his first major film direction.
This is his directorial debut, I
think. He's only directed one thing before this, which was an episode of the new Twilight Zone, which is the lowest rated episode in that series of the Twilight Zone.
I guess that tells you something, isn't it? Don't hire Simon Kinberg for your next superhero movie.
Oh no, I'm wrong. That is the second lowest.
Okay. Okay. I guess I'll end with this. To me, Transformers: The Last Night is a terrible movie. Clash of the Titans with Sam Worthington is a terrible movie. G.I. Joe: Rise of Cobra is a terrible movie. This is not in that caliber. Like, I didn't come out of this angry, and this is me speaking as an X-Men fan. I didn't come out of this angry. I didn't think it was great. I didn't think it was awful. This was the safest, paint by the numbers, get in and get out superhero movie I've seen in a long time. It didn't particularly dazzle me. It didn't make me, think about the concepts. It's a very simple story told in under 2 hours. It felt very been there, done that, because we have been there and we have done that with X-Men 3. So we've seen this story, this exactly the same story played out once again. Nothing about it felt inspired, but I'm not coming from a place of anger. I'm coming from a place of apathy. Like, yeah. I knew that this wasn't going to be a great movie going in. And it wasn't. Like, would I have loved a big, bombastic, fantastic ending to the X-Men 20th Century Fox films? Of course I would. But I kind of already do have that in my own head, and that's Logan and Days of Future Past. So if I'm going to round off with, like, I'm very glad that the 20th Century Fox X-Men films happened, because I do think they have a very important historical influence on the course of comic book movies in general. Certainly the first X-Men film and the first Spider-Man film definitely put comic book movies back on the map, I would say, and ushered them into this modern era of where we're getting, 5 or 6 comic book movies a year. I definitely do think that X-Men had a part in that. There have been some fantastic ones along the way, arguably some of the best comic book movies ever made.
Yeah.
But then there have also been some very, very bad ones. This is a bad one, but I don't think it justifies a 23% on Rotten Tomatoes. And I don't think it's the worst X-Men movie. And I certainly don't think it's the worst comic book movie I've seen in a long time.
No.
It's a complete flatline of a movie. And that's my opinion on it.
I agree with you. This movie is dead.
And that'll do for you guys. Damn, I was waiting for more. But
do you want me to give more?
Yes, go on. No, I mean, I think we got it first take, but if you want to give more, then go for it. I mean,
fine. This movie was dead.
Good night, everybody. No, honestly, I think we've taught this movie to death now. It's going to be very interesting to see the future of the X-Men franchise. I mean, we've seen what Disney does to stuff, right? We've seen Disney's take on a lot of stuff. Are we going to get to the point where we're harkening back to the 20th century Fox films and saying like, oh God, I wish they were back in charge of the X-Men? It's going to be very different. It's going to be
Here's
a
the
very
thing.
different course.
They did in this film, remember, allow themselves one F-bomb.
Yeah, that's we ain't gonna get that in the mouse. We're certainly not gonna get that.
That's why I want yeah, I feel like they always do better when they go kind of hard R. Like with Deadpool and Logan, it kind of worked better. I know that I absolutely love Days of Future Past, and I love First Class and X2. Once again, X1 doesn't hold up at all, even slightly.
I still think it's fine, but you know,
But
with
X3, once again, it's in that kind of same category. And with this film and Apocalypse, I mean, you put them 2 and 2. I just tell you, it's a bad series of films. It's a bad run. If you take them individually, and we were saying this beforehand, do you blame Apocalypse for not setting up enough for this film, or do you blame this film for not taking enough from Apocalypse?
Not taking enough from. I mean, I said this movie doesn't reference Apocalypse at all, really.
Not even slightly.
It references.
I swear the mansion got blown up.
Yeah, no, it did, and it's back magically. Oh no, did they rebuild at the end of Apocalypse? Because you have them in the danger room, I think, with the new outfits, which don't get used in this movie, by the way. But far be it from the X-Men movies to actually watch the endings of their previous movie.
I just think this film, they hadn't obviously looked at Apocalypse, maybe because it didn't get an overwhelmingly positive review. They just thought, do you know what, screw it, we've got to end the franchise from here. What do we remember from previous films? Oh yeah, Mystique's in it. Oh yeah, she's quite a big character. Let's kill her off. Who else is in it? Quicksilver in a slow motion running scene. We'll have one of those, and then won't mention him for the rest of the film, even though he's part of the core team. Okay, what else? Magneto making a villainous but relatable speech. Yep, we'll have that. Charles being miserable. Yeah, we can have that as well. What else do we need? We need a love interest that no one cares about. Yep, got that from this film. Didn't feel any chemistry between the two characters. We need a villain. Who should be the villain? Well, we can't have Magneto. He's been villain too many times. I don't know. Let's just pick something at random, and hopefully people won't notice. And the final fight scene, we'll have her sacrifice herself and save everyone. Oh, good. Okay, there you go. That's your film written. And I'm pretty sure that's exactly how long it took to write this film. And I'm pretty sure that's exactly how long it took to write the actual script for the film as well.
You say that this movie had a happy ending, but Logan is the final one in the timeline. And if you think about that, it's all going to be fine, Tate, because Professor X gets Alzheimer's and kills everyone. So...
I'm completely okay with that. And tomorrow, I mean, I've got to travel over the next few days. I'll just watch Logan. I'll put myself back in that happy place.
Oh, I'm not sure you're going to get to a happy place when you watch Logan.
It's a happier place because even though it's a miserable film, it's a good film, and good films make me feel happy, Chris. And this film did not make me feel happy, even though it had a fucking rainbow ending.
I guess the question that I'll put to you guys is that Marvel is very cookie cutter. It does have a formula. And if we get that with the X-Men franchise, do you think we would have got the likes of a First Class, a Days of Future Past, an X-Men 2, a Deadpool under Disney? It's very interesting to think about, or a Logan. I don't think we would. I honestly don't think we would, and I don't think we will again.
I will say this, though, and this is my final point that I'm going to make today. The most exciting thing to happen in my cinema was two people almost getting it on behind me in the opening ads, including a point where they almost got it on during the Toy Story 4 ad, of all things to actually, of all things that could have started it. Because my cinema was empty. Thank God that more people came along, and I audibly heard them say we should have picked an earlier screening. This one's too busy.
Here's the question, Tate, though. As we know your thoughts on X-Men and how much you were hating it, would you have averted your gaze and watched something far more entertaining than X-Men in your screening? You know what? Don't answer that question. We are done. We've said enough. That will do it for our X-Men Dark Phoenix review. Be sure to comment, subscribe, let us know what you thought of this film. Did you hate it? Did you just think it was okay? Or maybe you really like this movie? Give us some of your favorite X-Men films. How would you rank the X-Men films? Let's get a conversation going about this thing. The next movie that I need to see is Godzilla, which came out last week. I haven't had a chance to see it yet. I will be endeavoring to get to the cinema at the weekend, so look out for a review on Godzilla either at the weekend or a couple of days after that. And yeah, what else are we getting? We're getting Toy Story 4 towards the end of this month. It's been really awkward for big hitting blockbuster movies. A lot of them aren't doing very well. A lot of them aren't making very much money. So we'll see. Hopefully we get some good movies coming out recently, because boy, do I need one. That'll do it from us. Until the next video, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.